on that fear front, mate,
Yeah.
what is it that you obviously get lots of students who've learned how to kayak and then they come to you to improve, and then they've, everybody's got their own degree of trepidation and fears. And a lot of those they've learnt since they started kayaking. What is it that you wish that coaches would do differently in those first, 6 or 12 sessions that somebody has in a kayak? Because from what I can work out, when somebody gets afraid of something, it's normally those first 6 or 12 sessions that puts that fear in. And what do you think that coaches or instructors should think about doing differently or adapting to ensure that people don't end up scared?
Right. Well, in my opinion, I think it's all about approach. I think a lot of times in the initial stages of, paddlers getting into kayaking, sometimes that approach is a little too aggressive or it's a little too pushy, and it'll end up scaring them. Maybe they're getting pushed past their comfort zone a little further than they need to initially, because they're being pushed by a group. For me personally, I try to really suss out the individuals in my clinics and really work individually with those, because I can sense the fears that they're picking up, right? And as I think a lot of coaches can, the more they do it. And if you can work individually through those, sometimes that's hard when you have a really big group, but in a smaller group setting, it can really be effective. And I think if coaches just take a softer approach initially as they're gaining experience, I think it would be a little bit more helpful. That's just my approach. It's not necessarily going to work for everybody, but sometimes the more militant kind of approach where you're like, go do this, get out there, and there's all this kind of hype. For some people, that really, it builds anxiety for them. They just like, oh man, it's like, I'm in a military camp, I got to get out there. Oh, and they're kind of freaking out. So like I said earlier, my approach tends to be a little bit more calm. I can be very in your face and excited, but at the same time, I can very calmly speak to somebody and be very, very patient. I think patience is a virtue as well for being a really good instructor. If you do it once, that's, it's all about repeat activity, and having the patience with somebody saying, no, it's fine. That's why I'm here. I'm here to help you. So don't feel like doing it again is a problem. Like, that's how you're progressing. So let's just do that again, and slowly breaking things down too. I think identifying where people are having issues and then breaking it down, pulling everything away and just working on that one skill can help people progress a little quicker too. So I think it's approach would be my answer to that.
I find, I'm trying to find the right words, but I find that if there's a set syllabus to follow, actually that doesn't always serve the clients very well, because everybody in your group is working, as you say, at a different speed with different anxieties. And but for some students or clients, the syllabus is limiting because it stops them. Like, they're 6 sessions in out of 12 and they've done the whole syllabus, and the coach is kind of like, I won't say ignore them, but they're like, right, cool, check, those guys have got that far. And I often think, if we could if it's almost like we need to do one-to-one coaching in a group setting. So yes, you've got 8 clients, but actually you've got a group that you've got to manage and do some cool, fun stuff with. But actually you've got 8 individuals who all need individual input at different points in time. And actually your ability as a kayaker at that point in time really isn't that important. Like, as long as you're 3 steps, no, not 3 steps ahead, but 3 steps ahead of them. Like, you're safe, you know what you're doing, you're in the right place at the right time with the right people, so on and so forth. Actually, you don't need to be a great boater. You need to be an amazing human being.
I think like the approach that I often take, because a lot of times I'm teaching rolling. I teach surf clinics and that as well. But primarily when I go to an event, I'm kind of that rolling guy. And the approach that I generally take is I pair people up. So like, while I'm going, the first part of my sessions are all land-based information. Like, I don't even take anybody out into the water until I explain the full physics of what we're going out to do. And really give them some of that information, let them break that down before we get on the water. And during that time, I can generally be a fairly good judge of how people are going to progress just based on how well they're receiving the information or how flexible they are or whatnot. And so what I do is I pair them up, and like if I have 8 students, for example, I'm going to have 4 micro groups that are out on the water, and I can pair them up sort of in their skill level, or I can pair them up with, for example, maybe it might be even, 2 friends that are going to be continuing working together, but they're kind of at that same sort of level. And what I do is I treat each one of those pairs, I just work within their own progression. I'm not trying to, like, for each individual, their success could be completely different from the person beside them, right? So defining success, I think, is a really important thing, especially coming into rolling. You come into rolling, well, your perception of success is, I'm going to leave here with a roll, right? So I think it's really critical as coaches to really define what success is for that individual for that day. Like, this is where you are now. This is where I want to see you get today. Doesn't mean that necessarily every single person is going to leave with a roll, but provided they had a good progression and they're making great steps to get toward where they're going, in my opinion, that's success. So I think that's another really important thing. As a coach or an instructor, you need to define what success is. Otherwise, they're going to determine what that is on their own. And you really don't want people leaving feeling disappointed because their expectations were way higher than they possibly could have achieved. So
I often say when I'm coaching rolling, like, are there people like, what are we going to do first? And I say, we're going to fall over really comfortably.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like when we can fall over really comfortably, I'm pretty positive we can come up really quickly and comfortably as well. But like this rolling thing isn't just about what happens when you're upside down. Actually, there's a whole circle that happens, and each part of the circle has its own importance.
Absolutely.
Depending upon blade, environment, physicality, psychology, whatever else.
Totally. And I think a lot of times too, when people learn to roll, they learn how to roll generally in flatter water, maybe in a pool, warm water. And then I think the key is to take that skill once you dial it in and to really slowly start progressing yourself into that moving water or into those dynamic situations where you're actually going to need that roll, right? The chances are you're probably not going to need a roll in flat water. It's when you get out into that mess and it knocks you over that so you need to really get out into that environment and start to learn that environment and learn how to be calm in that environment. Because the first thing you're going to do is just get stressed, and then you're pulling too hard and you're popping out your shoulder like I did, right? Like, you really got to learn to relax and tone things down when you're out in that environment. No different than any of the other skills you do out in rough water conditions. It's all about relaxing, loosen the hips, and really just letting the kayak do what it needs to do rather than fighting it. So I feel it's very important, once you learn how to roll in flatter water, that you slowly take that skill out into moving water where it's actually going to be needed. And I think a lot of paddlers don't do that. I think they learn how to roll and be like, okay, I know how to roll. I'm good. I'm just going to go progress all my other skills now. Right. But rolling a kayak is the ultimate way to get back. It's the ultimate rescue, right? I mean, it should be your first option, right? And for a lot of people, they learn it and they don't practice it enough in those kind of conditions, and they're swimming, and now it's, they're rescuing in other ways, when that starts to become more of a liability on your group, and if you can learn that skill in dynamic water, then you become less of a liability to the group that you're paddling with, which should be the ultimate goal for everybody. So
because
my advice would be, once you learn it, get out into that moving water and start really progressing in that dynamic situation, because current's going to hold you, right? It's going to hold you on one side or the other. Like, man, God forbid you only have a roll on the right, because you get out into the current, it's going to make you roll on the left.